Good morning. How's it going? Switching all the tech stuff over. There we go. Got the mic working. Hello. Apologies for the delay. I was on time for 2 days in a row. I can't leave you guys expecting it. Gotta have you on your toes a little bit. You never know when I'm predictable. I am trying to be unpredictable. How's everybody today? Good morning. Finishing prepping my coffee. I was running around like a headless chicken. It's a very different experience when your child is home on summer vacation versus not being in the house after 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you hear any weird dinosaur noises in the background, that is why. Hope everybody had a wonderful evening. Nice to see you all. Hi, Carolyn. Nice to see you, honey. Happy Friday. Yes, I'm getting you guys ready for the unpredictable podcast schedule over the next couple months. For those of you who are followers on Facebook, it might be a good idea for you to subscribe to the YouTube because YouTube channel gives you much better notifications. I will not be going live every day, nor will I be going live at the same time every day. However, I will be doing podcasts while I'm traveling. I couldn't go away for that long without saying hi to you guys. So yes, we will be popping on. I just don't know when or where or how. So it depends on what we're doing, what we're up to. For those of you who aren't aware of what I'm talking about, we're going on a ghost busting tour. Myself and my SRT crew and some friends, we're all meeting up and going on a big tour to cross over a bunch of earthbounds and chase beasties around the UK. So we'll be starting in Wales, we'll be in England, and we'll also be in Scotland. So if you guys would like to meet up with us, I am making a plan for that over this weekend. We will have 3 locations to choose from if you guys would like to meet up with us. We'll have a meetup planned for Wales. We'll have a meetup planned for Glastonbury, where we'll be, and then we'll have a meetup planned somewhere around Stirling when we're in Scotland. So if you guys are interested in hanging out with us in person, it's going to be myself and a bunch of friends of ours together hanging out. So if you'd like to join us, we would love to see you guys. We'll make a plan for that. So does anybody have any specific questions that I didn't get to yesterday? We had a 2.5-hour long podcast yesterday. And we probably could have gone 5 hours with the amount of questions that you guys have. You always have such great questions, so I feel bad skipping out on some of them. But I had to be kind of choosy based on how much time we had. So we are going to make a plan. If you guys would like to meet up with us, you can message me privately and we'll get you the schedule. Yes, there was somebody asking about the sun. Yes, there was a major solar flare yesterday, an X-class solar flare. Zach mentioned a little bit about how the sun is helping our planet kind of raise in frequency. So, Daisy wants to know what planet the Nordics live on. The Nordics live on all sorts of different planets. The Nordics are probably the most... They move around a lot. So there are... I don't know if there is a specific planet of just Nordics. I don't think there is. They move around a lot. In fact, they're the ones that are kind of everywhere. They're in every group. You're going to find Nordics in every group. Adriana posted a really great post about Nordics as well. If you guys go scrolling back through her posts, you'll see them. Katie had a question. Do starseeds get in death loops? Curious how some of us have bad witch wounds. We were abused and starved, but didn't end up in a loop. Is it because we are starseeds? You can get out of a loop on your own. It's hard, but you're not permanently stuck anywhere. If you raise your consciousness and kind of realize what you're stuck in, and not only that, but if there's a lot of prayers and public support, then it also can pull you out of the loop. We found this. There was a murder victim that we checked on. And the murder victim was originally in a death loop. And we found that the victim was actually kind of wandering around in the woods. And we're like, okay, how did you get out of the death loop and into the woods? And they said, prayers. The community was praying for him, and he could hear their prayers, and it actually pulled him out of the loop. So there are times where we were stuck as earthbounds, and we did have an experience as an earthbound, but eventually we found our way and we crossed over. So it depends on how they do it, because honestly, there's just so many factors that determines whether or not you're going to end up as an earthbound. And for the record, that was for veterans. Veteran starseeds is a very different thing to new starseeds, because most new starseeds are in a pod. So if you're in a pod, you're going to wake up in the pod. You're not going to be an earthbound. That is another reason why it's quite different for starseeds, I should say. New starseeds anyway. Angela had a question. Good morning. I had a question about guides. Do we have the same main guide for every incarnation? No, we do not. We make a plan with a specific guide in mind. My companion guide from day one, basically from the day I was born, is my guide Charlie. Charlie is a friend from, basically a best friend from a few different lifetimes. And Charlie is well-trained as a guide. He doesn't want to incarnate right now, or hasn't for a long time. Understandably so, right, Charlie, considering what you went through. So Charlie went to school to be an actual soul guide. You actually have to go to school to become a guide. You have to learn what to do and how to keep that person on track. It's a very big job to have, a very large role to play in somebody's life. So you don't choose that role lightly. So you might have the same guide in multiple lifetimes. If you had a really good lifetime with that person helping you, like, let's say that you made a plan, right? And being human, you come in and you're trying to follow that plan, but you don't remember it. So your guide, their main job is to keep you on your plan. And they may have to do things that you don't like because of it. Like, let's say, for example, you meet somebody and you're like, oh, I'm crazy about this person. I just love this person so much. And the guide knows secretly that's not the person you plan to be with, that later on in life, you have another person that's meant for you. So they might even break your heart if they have to keep you on your target plan. And it's a hard job because they love you very much. Like I said, they're your closest friend and confidant. So to have to kind of put you through difficult situations is not something a companion guide wants to do, but that's part of their job. That's part of their role, to make sure that you are staying on target. So let's say you get to the end of your lifetime and you've fulfilled like 90% of your planned goals because that guide kept you on target. That's a phenomenal guide. That guide deserves like an Academy Award. If you've managed to keep to 90% of your plan, that soul guide deserves a major round of applause. You know what they say about successful people, right? I've heard this one quote where they say behind every successful man is an equally exhausted woman. Like one of those kind of comments. Well, you can say the same thing about a soul guide. For every successful human, there is an equally exhausted soul guide right behind, standing behind them going, oh my God, that was a lot of work. So yes, you do tend to keep the same guide if they did a phenomenal job in the past. And to be honest, being a soul guide is not an easy job. It is one of the most thankless jobs you will ever have. Okay? Think about it. Most people don't even know you exist. How many people? I actually have met a few people that blame their soul guides for every problem in their life. Like, my soul guides don't help enough. They don't protect me. They don't do this. They don't do that. And I say to them, do you ask for those things? And they're like, oh, I shouldn't have to. Well, you still have to ask for these things. You still have to give them consent. So yes, your soul guides, there's certain ones that are with you through thick and thin from the minute you get here to the minute you leave. And those are your strongest, most companion guides. Hi, Chantal. Nice to see you. How's your hand? Are you feeling any better? I saw the picture. It looked like it was sore. Very big Ana. So thank you, Charisse, for answering questions. If you have any other questions about soul guides, I'm happy to answer them. I like talking about the guides. Jenny says the lottery guy reference really stuck. Never played, so how could he win? See, that stuck with me since Bible school. Like that one got me. Every once in a while in Bible study, they would have a real, they would drop a nugget of wisdom that would stick with you for life, and that was one of them. And it's funny because I don't play the lottery. I don't actually subscribe to it with the exact, meaning, but it fits for a lot of other reasons. Was there anything else yesterday that Zach or Adriana said that stuck out to you guys? Anything surprising that you learned during the conversation? Chantal says freak accident. I don't know if I believe in accidents, Chantal. Better be careful. Keep up with that grounding, hey? What is the best practice to learn how to effectively receive guidance and communicate with your guides? Great question, Heather. So communicating with your guides is best done through consistency every day. You talk to them as if you would be talking to somebody who's standing right next to you. They are standing right next to you. They can hear everything you say. Even if you whisper, they can hear you. I whisper all the time and my guides can hear me. So the most important thing, though, is that you're asking for things, that you're asking for signs, you're asking for messages, you're asking for confirmation, you're asking for synchronicities, you're asking for validation, whatever you need, you have to ask for it, because the guides are going to stand by with their hands like this. Like, if you're not asking me, they can't do anything. Why? Because of free will. So it's very important for you to ask your soul guide. This is why prayer is effective. People don't understand. They're like, oh, sending thoughts and prayers. Well, you might be sending your guides if you're doing that. Or you might be calling in somebody else to do that something for you. So my point is, if you're not asking, you're not getting. So to sit down, even for maybe 15 minutes in the morning, right? Before you have your chaos of the day start to settle in, just sit down and have a conversation. Talk to them about anything. Tell them how you feel. Tell them what pain you might be dealing with. Tell them what concerns you might have. Tell them what you've been worrying about. Tell them everything that you would tell a close confidant that you want their help with, that you would like their love and support, because that is what they're there for. And as Adriana said yesterday, you have to be very specific, because there's a lot of things that they don't understand. You say, I want a better job. They need to know what kind of specifics you need in order to give you the kind of job that you want. So for the most part, I think that people are already kind of learning about their guides, and people are already kind of giving them consent to help to a degree, but to have a strong connection is very different. That is something that you must develop over time, something that you do every single day, right? You could meet your best friend on the street, right? But how are you going to know your best friends until you get to know that person? How do you know that you're like this until you don't give yourself the opportunity to become like that? So it's really important to sit down with them every single day, to call them in, to ask for signs, to ask for help, and even just ask for, you can ask for anything. Just say, tingle me on the forehead so I can feel that your presence is there. We are so busy going about our day that most of the time we aren't even thinking about our guides. We have no idea that we have a whole support network basically following us around at any given time. So if you're not talking to your guides, you're basically like me and like me, Miss Independent, who can't ask for help, who's constantly struggling for no reason, because if you just ask, you get extra support. So you don't have to be one of those people who's struggling all the time and trying to make ends meet on your own. You have a whole team in spirit that supports you. But a lot of time they don't know what you need. They don't know how to give you what you need because you're not being specific. Can the guide appear to you in a dream as someone you know? Usually not. Usually they appear as, well, I mean, as themselves. But maybe anything is possible. Anything is possible, especially when it comes to messages from spirit in your dream state. Just keep in mind that the dream state is where entities tend to mess with you the most. They are very sneaky in that regard. So the dream state is when you are most vulnerable. That is when you are most susceptible to somebody putting thoughts in your head or beliefs, contracts, that sort of thing. So dream state protection is essential. Every night before you go to bed, you should be asking your soul guide to protect your dream state. Heather says, can they hear me when I talk to them in my head? Usually not. If you're just going about your day and you're just thinking to them, then no, they're not listening. Why? Because that is a violation of your privacy to be reading your mind. They're not mind readers. They put thoughts into your head, which makes you think that they're in your head, but they're not. They're just standing next to you talking. So they're not like into your mind. They're not trying to get into your mind. In fact, I even said to my guides, I was like, do you read my mind? They're like, no. And I said to Charlie, I was like, you can read my mind. It's okay, Charlie. And he's like, no, thank you. He was like, no, I don't want to. And I was like, I don't really blame you. My head's kind of chaotic sometimes. Because I'm always, like I said, squirrel brain, right? So my thoughts are always doing this. And I have ADD, I have since I was a kid. And so my guides are like, nope, I'm not going in there. No interest. So if you want to talk to your guide through your mind, you have to do so through telepathy. How do you do telepathy? By sitting down, grounding yourself, meditating, calling them in, setting the intention to clear your mind and connect to them. So you let them know, say, hey, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to try to connect to you now. And you sit down and you ground yourself. You clear your field, right? I teach you guys during the astral projection or the psychic protection course how to wash out your field and cleanse your field. So you clean all the riffraff out of your field. And once you're sitting down, you're well grounded, you're clearing your mind. That is when it's easier to have a two-way conversation. So telepathy is very different to just sitting there reading your mind. Who reads your mind? Entities read your mind. Entities don't give a flying rat's ass about your privacy. In fact, they actually go in. They're the polar opposite to your soul guides. Okay, and so they will go in and they will rummage around in your head like it's a Rolodex, and they will feed on anything that they can get out of your mind. They do that. So this is part of the confusion for a lot of people. Soul guides will not do that. Soul guides, if you have a guide, for example, like when Adriana is in trance and a soul guide is using her mind basically as like a microphone, it's like a relay station, right? So when Adriana steps out of body, Zach can step into body and have a conversation with us. So he's still using her mind to do that. So that is a form of telepathy that's happening there. And he has to go through her mind for certain things. Like, for example, if he's looking for a word about something and he can't think of the word. So where does he go? He goes through Adriana's Rolodex to look for the word that he needs. So your soul guides, when you're channeling, that's different because they need access to your knowledge and experience when you're channeling. So that's slightly different for when you're trying to use telepathy during meditation versus channeling. But again, channeling is one of the most dangerous things that you can do, and I cannot express that enough. This is why, if you noticed yesterday, I had a conversation with Zach. It took a few minutes for him to pop in. That is because there's a lot of passwords. He has several passwords that he has to give to Adriana before she will open the door and let him in and allow him to use her vessel. There's a lot of mediums who are open channels that do not have that knowledge, that are not aware of the dangers of this. And part of that is why so many of them end up with different issues. I have interviewed mediums on this podcast. I'm not going to say who. I love them very much. So I'm not trying to say anything negative about this person. But it was very unsettling to see different spirits like grabbing the microphone. They would pop in and say something, and then the voice would change to another voice. And then it was like 4 voices trying to occupy the same medium at the same time. And people who are an open channel, that is what happens. You basically are just holding the mic up going, who wants to use the mic? And by microphone, I'm talking about you. You are the microphone. So if you open yourself up to spirit and you start channeling, Jessica said that was freaky that day. You know what I'm talking about. One of the 4 spirits that grabbed the mic was a little boy. And he was talking. It was honestly creepy, I must admit. I checked later on this medium with another person, and I was like, who was it that I was talking to? Was that really a little boy? And they said, yeah, that was really a little boy. And I was like, man, that was creepy. Hearing a little boy's voice coming through a woman. And they were like, yeah. So this was a huge learning experience for me because it's not safe to do that. Not at all is it safe to do that because they can keep the microphone. If they really wanted to. Jessica said horror film child giggles. Yes, little Charlie. You guys remember. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It was so creepy. Well, this is what happens if you're not careful, if you're just allowing yourself to be open, then anybody can come in. I had a client that this is one of the craziest cases I've heard for children in quite a while, where a little boy was basically like hearing things, like hearing whispers in the house. And then he could have sworn he heard like snake noises. And I was like, snake noises? I was like, I wonder if that's a demonic. So last night we tuned in, we checked the little boy. There were hardly any entities. There were just a couple elementals. And I'm like, what's harassing the little boy to the point where he's like having nightmares and he's hearing all these horrible things and he hears a freaking snakes, like snake noises. Anyway, I go through, there's no entities. And I'm like, what is the cause of this? So I said to Zach last night, I was like, Zach, this boy is hearing some really creepy stuff. What is it? And he goes, oh, I know what it is. It's an earthbound. I was like, really? And he said, yeah. And I said, he says he's hearing a snake. And he goes, actually, the earthbound is a drug addict and he's running around with a snake. I was like, seriously? There's a drug addict earthbound in the house harassing the 10-year-old with a snake. And he's like, yeah. He's straight up like in his ear, like in his ear. And the little boy couldn't sleep. And so I tuned in with Zach last night and we're finding this. And I'm like, what is his problem? Like, why is he doing this? The little boy's trying to sleep and he's like, with the snake. Like, leave the kid alone. What is your malfunction? So we tune in and Zach's like, I'm not even talking to this guy. I'm just going to send him to, he's got to cross. He's going. I'm not even saying a word to this guy. He's just going to go. And I thought to myself, my God, think of how many children are being gaslighted. Think of how many children are being messed with. He's just trying to sleep. And this crazy, deranged earthbound with a snake comes in. I can't wait to hear from that client. I hope they had a really good night's sleep that was without slithering noises in their ears. But why? I've been asking myself since last night, like, why? Why would you do that? This is the logic, though, that some people have on the other side. Like, earthbounds can be just as bad as demonics. Some of them can be so mean for no reason. Why would you do that to the poor kid? I don't understand it. So people are, they say, well, when you die as a drug addict, you kind of still keep that mentality. But still, ever since last night, I'm like, I keep thinking about it. Like, what the hell? Like, why? This is the kind of thing we find in these clearings. And we're just like, this poor kid has been harassed for God knows how long. And I was like, because another reason why there was no entities in the house. And somebody commented, they said, oh, the other day somebody left a comment and they said, somebody told me that sage attracts entities. And I laughed to myself and I thought, okay, that was probably an entity that told you that, that sage attracts entities. Because you know what's crazy? In that house, I mentioned there were no entities in the house. Do you know why there were no entities? Because the mom was trying to smudge the shit out of that earthbound. She was trying so hard to get the earthbound out of the house. She didn't know it was an earthbound, what she was dealing with, but she knew there was something nasty harassing her kid. So she was burning sage like crazy, trying to get rid of this thing. It got rid of everything except the earthbound. That's why there were no entities in the house, except for a couple of little screwy elementals. So it's just crazy. Sage absolutely does work, but it's annoying that it doesn't work on earthbound. You'd think, some people said the other day about earthbounds and how some of them are quite different, and they are. And this is another thing that some people don't really understand, and this is one of the reasons why I want to explain this to people. You know how we were talking about how your vibration is one of your best ways of protection, right? If you have a high vibration, it's a form of protection because they're going to try and get in and they're going to bounce off. Your high vibration is like a wall of energy, right? It's like your force field around you. And if your vibration is very high, it actually creates like a buffer zone around you. And the entities have to work their way into that buffer zone, right? They have to press their way through that high vibe frequency to get to you at the middle, right? So it takes them time to work their way in. And entities, especially if you're very high vibrational, they're not even going to bother. It would take them so long to try and get through. They're just going to go find an easier snack somewhere else. But with earthbounds, it's different. Why? Because some of them are very, very high vibrational earthbounds. There could be somebody who is a very happy, loving person who simply didn't want to cross over. You don't have to cross. If the doorway opens for you and you're like, I don't feel like going right now, you don't have to. So there can be very loving, high vibrational earthbounds that are just kind of wandering around, having a good time, kind of being a little nosy, but more curious than anything else. I had a lovely earthbound named John come into my house a few weeks ago, where Carolyn and I was just kind of hanging out, and I felt somebody in the house, and I heard somebody walking, and I said something, and I was like, Carolyn, can you check and see? And she's like, yeah, there's an earthbound in the house. And I was like, why? What's he want? And she's like, oh, he was just curious, wanted to say hi. He was concerned, he didn't want to scare you, that kind of thing. So we had a conversation with him real quick, and I crossed him over. Lovely guy, very nice. He was just kind of wandering the neighborhood out of curiosity, seeing what was around. So when you have a high vibe earthbound, it's easier for them to attach to you because your vibration is high and their vibration is high. If you are somebody who is a low vibrational person, let's say that you're low vibe because you've been drinking a lot or you've been going through a lot of stress, you're more likely to pick up a low vibe earthbound. If you're low vibe, you pick up the low vibe earthbounds. Does that make sense? So if you're dealing with a dependency, like let's say that you're dependent to alcohol right now, and you go into a bar, you're going to pick up an earthbound who has the same proclivities that you do. So yes, you can ask angelics to cross them over. You can call in Yeshua. Yeshua is the one that shows up every time without fail. So if you really want somebody who you can really depend on, I would say either call in Yeshua or Mary Magdalene because they are wonderful at crossing over earthbounds. They're very loving. Nobody argues with Jesus. When he shows up, they're like, okay, I'm going. Nobody argues with Jesus. Well, except for a couple drug addicts, like I've mentioned before. The problem is when you die under the influence of something, you continue to be under the influence of that thing even after you've died. This is why we had that really funny case of, I don't even know if I put this in the report, actually. I don't know if the guides let me put this in the report. But one of the earthbounds we had tuned into this one house, and Zach was like, hold on a second. Is that a succubus? And I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, that's not a succubus. That's an earthbound. And I said, how are you going to confuse an earthbound with a succubus? And he goes, if you saw this earthbound, you would understand. And I said, why? And he goes, well, first of all, he's naked. I was like, why is the earthbound naked? And they're like, I think he died the influence of a substance. And I was like, what gives you that thought? And he goes, because he's literally running around the house like a mad person, like streaking, like zoom, 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 zoom. And I said, how are you going to catch it? And he goes, I don't know. We're trying nets right now. And he even got out of one of the nets. Are you serious? He's like, yeah, I think it sounded like he was on PCP or something, because this guy was just losing it. And Zach was like getting frustrated. He's like, enough is enough. I'm not playing this game. We're calling in the angelics. And I started giggling to myself. I was like, these poor angelics, whenever everybody else gets too frustrated or doesn't want to deal with something, or if something is too gross, they're like, I'm not touching that. That's when they call in the angelics. The angelics tend to get the shit end of the stick, so to speak. So if nobody wants to touch it, we're like, okay, it's time for the angelics to come in. So anyway, they were like, you know what? Enough is enough. We can't even catch them with a net. Let's just call in the angelics and have them deal with it. And we're like, all right, fine. So we called in the angelics. And I said, did it work? Did they catch him? And they said, he's actually trying. He's swinging at them. He's trying to fight them. He's trying to literally like swing at the angelics. Like he's trying to get into a fist fight with them. He's like, Zach was gobsmacked. He was a bit like, are you kidding me? So, you know, I don't think calling Jesus would have worked on that guy. He had to go to the special part of the healing place. Jessica said astral taser. Imagine having that earthbound in your house. Imagine the chaos that man was causing without this woman even being aware, like, of what's happening. So earthbounds can be crazier than entities sometimes, just to put it into perspective. And most of them are not nice. Like most of them, like if you're a really nice person and you were okay, like you were prepared to die, like let's just say like you knew you were sick, you came to terms with it and you were okay with it, you know, even if you had a little bit of fear, it's okay. In most cases, if you die in a high vibe mindset without fear, and you're not too locked, because the fear keeps you locked into 3D is why the fear is a problem, right? The fear lowers your vibration. So if your vibration is low, it makes it harder to see, you know, what's going on around you. So it really depends on all kinds of different factors as to whether or not you're going to cross over. But if you're happy, if you're content, if you felt like you fulfilled what you came here to do, most of the time you cross over. It's that understanding that it's like acceptance, I think, is what it really is. When you accept your situation and you're like, okay, what's next? That's when it's easier for you to perceive the door, so to speak. But if you're one of those people that is in absolute denial that you've died, or if you died under the influence of something, or if there was an entity holding you back and causing problems, or if you died from any form of self-harm, even if you're drinking yourself to death, chances are you get stuck. And you get stuck because of your low vibration and your confusion. That confusion creates overlayers, and it's what we call overlayers anyway. And it's the overlayers that cause the confusion that drop their perception and kind of keep them. It's like blinders on. It's like narrow tunnel vision that they get. So you can have your soul guide standing right next to you going, hey, we're trying to cross you over. And you don't even know. You're still locked into the 3D. You might not even see your soul guides that are like, hey, we've got the door open. Are you going to cross over? If you're not aware that you've died, or if you're still so locked into the 3D that, I mean, we have even heard of homeless people wandering around collecting cans as an earthbound. One of my friends saw it leaving a hospital in the middle of the night. It was like she got off her shift at like 4 o'clock in the morning. She comes out of the hospital. She looks over in the alleyway and there's an earthbound picking up cans. She knew it was an earthbound because she could see through him. And she was like, why would an earthbound be walking around picking up cans? And picking up cans. And she goes over and looks. And there's no cans. And she's like, what is even happening? Do you know what the earthbound did? He manifested cans. The earthbound was creating astral cans that he could pick up and carry around because he thought he was still alive. He thought he was alive walking around in an alleyway somewhere picking up cans. And because he was looking for cans to trade in, he was manifesting them on the ground. That is how locked into 3D we can be. And that poor gentleman probably passed away. I don't know. He probably froze or had a heart attack or something and had no idea that he had died. So what did he do? He got back up and went back to doing what he was doing. You will find earthbounds at the gym working on leg day, having no idea that they're dead. You'll go to the gym and you'll be like, why is there a bunch of earthbounds in the gym? Well, it depends. We've learned from clearing one particular gymnasium. As I mentioned before, I have one particular client. I call her my little gymnast friend, who I'm still clearing on occasion because they're still messing with her. We went and cleared the gym, and what do we find every time we clear her gym? Well, we find earthbounds in there working on leg day, of course. If they don't know they're dead, they're going on with their life. They have no idea. They're still in there using equipment. They're trying to pay their bills. They're going to work. They're going on with their life, having no idea whatsoever that they're dead. Do you know what the other half of the earthbounds are doing? The earthbounds who actually know they're dead, the ones that are in the gym, I'll give you 2 guesses what those guys are doing. They're not working on leg day. They're doing something very different. So this is the interesting thing that happens when you have earthbounds. You have the earthbounds who are going on with life like never happened. And then you have the other earthbounds who know they're dead and they're in the bathroom perving. Exactly. We found a bunch of pedo earthbounds hanging out in the girls' locker room. Do you have any idea how mad that shit made me? I was like, send them to the doorway. Make sure they hit their head on the door as they go through it. Like, I'm so mad about it. It's just, if you were a creeper in life, you're a creeper in death. It doesn't change. So just saying, like, you may think you're alone when you're in a certain location. I can't change at the gym anymore. I have a gym that I go to. I can't change there anymore. I go there wearing my clothes and I leave wearing those clothes. I only change at my house because I know for a fact that if I go in there and change, there's going to be earthbounds in there going like this at me. No, thank you. They do it to schools. Yes, they go everywhere. They're all over the place. So if you guys wonder why I go on these earthbound chasing adventures, why we go on ghost busting tours and try and cross over as many earthbounds as possible, a large part of it is compassion, that we want to help. We want to help them. We love helping people, especially people who have been stuck in some horrible situation for a long time. But a lot of it is also to benefit the living. Because I hate to say it, even with the nicest, most loving earthbounds, because we find them on occasion, right? We find earthbounds who are so sweet and loving. Like, we'll tune in to somebody, right? And then we'll find like their grandfather attached to them. And they'll be like, Grandpa, what you doing here? Why are you attached to your granddaughter? And he'll innocently say, I was just trying to help. I was just trying to protect her. And then we're like, but you're going to have to go, Gramps. I'm sorry. You're not actually helping her. You think you might be helping her. Because Grandpa, will think he's protecting her. He's like, no, I'm protecting. And we're like, you have to cross over before you can be a protector. And they're like, why? Why do we have to do that? And we're like, because it literally drains their energy. They don't know this. They have no idea that it's actually causing harm, that it causes them to feel depressed. They can feel when you have an earthbound attached to you, you can feel what that earthbound is feeling and vice versa. So it's important to be aware that of yourself and how you feel when you're off, because if an earthbound attaches to you, it makes it weird. Like, I saw a post this morning of a 22-year-old saying, I don't know why I wake up every day exhausted. It was in another group, and they were just saying, I'm 22 years old. I should not be exhausted every day when I wake up. Well, if I hear of a young person who's exhausted, first thing I ask is, do you cut your cords regularly? How many cords do you have that people are draining your energy from? Because cords is one of the fastest ways to lose your energy. It's like a straw, and somebody is just sucking on the straw, taking your energy. But chances are there's something else too. There's going to be something else that's got a straw, and it's probably earthbounds. Earthbounds are the most common thing that people pick up. They're everywhere. And they don't mean like to cause harm. Most of them are not actually like malevolent beings. They're very loving in some cases. They're trying to be supportive. So what do we say to Grandpa? We're like, okay, Grandpa, look, you're going to have to cross over. They're going to take you to the healing place. And after the healing place, you can come back and watch over your granddaughter. You can then help her. Because if you attach to her now, even if you mean well, you could have the most loving intentions possible. But without having them cross over first, they're draining that energy. One of my favorite Earthbound cases, I had a giggle about this. This is actually one of Dr. Palmer's recordings. If you go on my mentor's YouTube channel, my mentor, for those of you who don't know, his name is Dr. Terrence Palmer. He passed away a few years ago, but his YouTube channel is still up and he's got some amazing case studies. But there was this one interesting case study. There's actually a couple different ones about Earthbounds. But one of the things about Earthbounds, and especially when it comes to people who are trying to be loving, like they mean well, right? So you explain to them, if you want to help, you have to cross over and then you can come back. There was this one Earthbound they found. His name was Samuel. And Samuel wasn't a very nice person throughout his life. He didn't really have any loved ones, right? So when they found Samuel, they said, let's call forward somebody and help him cross over. And nobody came. And they were looking into his record and they were wondering why nobody came. And it's because of how mean he was in his life. He was so cruel to people that there wasn't even one person waiting for him. Not even one. So they called forward an angelic, and it was an angelic that helped Samuel cross over. And it just goes to put into perspective that if you felt unloved in life, if you felt that you didn't have any support, usually what that meant is that people took that to heart, right? And they become angry, they become bitter. And I still think about Samuel all the time, because think about it. If he didn't have any love in life and he wanted to cross over, but he didn't have anybody to come for him. So there's a lot of Earthbounds out there who just want love, who just want to be a part of something. And when they are not accepted, what do? Well, it's like naughty children. They're trying to get attention, right? That's what children do. They get naughty when they want attention, when they want love. And that's what Samuel was going through. He didn't get love his entire life. And even in death, he didn't get love. If you think about how much pain that must cause somebody, even as an Earthbound, I still think about Samuel on occasion. So remember, when they talk about bullies and why bullies act the way they do, sometimes a bully is just somebody who's in a lot of pain and didn't have anyone to love them. Somebody said, why didn't his mother come? Sometimes your mother is not a loving maternal person. Sometimes a horrible mother is why people end up in Samuel's situation. If you couldn't even get love from your parents, it's very challenging. How are you going to get love later on in life if you don't know how to accept that love? So my whole point about these Earthbounds is I'm trying to understand from their perspective why they are the way they are. And so many of them are in pain. So many of them are confused. And yeah, even the really gross, pervy ones that end up in a locker room somewhere spying on women, even they deserve some love, because that's how they got there in the first place. Nobody taught them how to be, how to love, how to actually be a compassionate individual. That is a lesson that soul is still trying to develop. So my point in all of this is, even though people are very challenging, there are some nasty people out there, but they still need love. Otherwise, they end up like Samuel. And I can't even imagine how that must feel as an Earthbound without having even one person come forward for you. Not even one. Anyway. Just reading through the comments. There was another case that just popped into my mind about, you guys got to check out Dr. Terrence Palmer's YouTube channel. If you're bored over this weekend and you want something to watch, his case studies are amazing. There was another case study that just popped into my head. It was actually a more funny case, where this woman had it was like tones, and she would hear almost like singing. It didn't make sense to her. She was wondering why. Anyway, she booked a clearing through my mentor, and she got it. They tuned in to this woman. And you know what they found attached to her? She went on holiday and she picked up a monk, an earthbound monk. And they said to him, they're like, wait a second. They're like, you shouldn't, what are you doing here? It was basically the questioning. They're like, don't you know better? And he's like, I guess I'm a naughty monk. That's what the monk said in the recording. They're like, don't you know better than that? And he says, I guess I'm a naughty monk. And they were like, well, why are you here? And he's like, I just liked her energy. So sometimes, an earthbound will attach to you just because they feel that you have beautiful energy. And they were like, all right, okay, you have to go now, right? And he was like, yeah. Fun's over was kind of the vibe about it. And they called forward his brothers, and his brothers came with him to cross over. And it just made me chuckle that he was like, yeah, I know better. I probably shouldn't have done it. They were like, you're a monk. You know how consciousness works. You know how all this works. What are you doing? And it was just funny to see that even people who have dedicated their entire life to spirituality can end up taking the wrong turn. Can end up going down the wrong doorway, so to speak. He just saw a bright light and was like, ooh, what's that? And went towards it, not knowing that the woman who booked the clearing was the bright light that he was drawn to. He was probably thinking, oh, I wonder if this is the doorway or something, and then went, and sure enough. And then he realized, okay, that wasn't a door, that was a closet. He's basically stuck in somebody's etheric, but he's like, oh, this is so nice, I'm going to stay. So sometimes that happens where they don't mean to attach to you. It's accidental. And then they get there and they're like, well, I'm here now. I may as well just chill in your etheric field. What does it feel like? I did ask too. I was curious. What does it feel like to be attached to somebody? Like to be an earthbound and connected to somebody. And they were like, it's like living vicariously through you. And there was a crazy case that happened, where an individual was basically seeing things from another perspective. I had a client that was basically like having out of bodies even when they were awake, and they were wondering what was happening there. And we tune in and we find out that there were attachments creating that disassociation to the point where they were basically like pushing him out of his own body. And these things can happen through attachments. So what do you do then? Well, you need a clearing, because first of all, that person wouldn't have been able to clear themselves. Once an entity has their claws in that deep, it's too late. You have to get somebody from a third party to come in and clear you. Self-clearing doesn't work. Somebody asked, how do we get rid of earthbounds? Well, it depends on the earthbound. Generally, it depends on why they attach to you in the first place. Let's say that you were a drinker, right? And you have a whole bunch of earthbounds attached to you, because if you go to a bar drinking, you're going to pick up earthbounds that like to drink. So if you pick up earthbounds that like to drink, you're going to start having even more cravings for drinking. They're going to be like, come on, let's go to the bar. Come on, let's go get a drink. They're going to be goading you into drinking so they can ride your buzz. They can feel what you're feeling when they are in your etheric field attached to you. So every buzz that you get, they can feel. They ride that buzz as well. This is why overdoses happen, where you can be like out of it, right? Like you are already so drunk, you're pretty much on the verge of blacking out. And they're like, go on, drink more, drink more. This is why if you've seen people who are already delirious to the point where you can't even carry a conversation to them and they still want to go and do more drinking or do more drugs, that is the earthbounds or the entities attached to them that are goading them into doing more, right? More. So if you want to get rid of the earthbounds, what do you think is the quickest way to get rid of an alcoholic earthbound? Anybody know? Anybody have a clue as to what would be the best thing that you can do to get rid of? Let's say if you had 3 alcoholic earthbounds on you, what is the number one way to get rid of them? Anybody have a clue? I'm just curious if anybody can guess. Raising your vibration is one thing if they have low vibration. Bingo! Stop drinking. Yes. I'm so thrilled you guys figured that out. Yes, thank you. If you stop drinking, they don't have a reason. They have no buzz to ride. You're going to piss them off. And that's why when you're like, no, I'm going to quit drinking. And they're like, oh, hell no, you're not. And that's why it's really, really, really hard for some people to quit drinking. It might be that you've got layers of trauma, that you've had multiple incarnations where you were trying to quit the addiction. But that is the one thing that they are going to make it even harder to do. They don't want you to stop drinking. They're going to push you and push you and push you and push you and goad you into drinking. And unfortunately, I recognize that. Renee says it's unfortunately not that easy. Oh, I know. It took me nearly 20 years to get off of Adderall. So I feel you. I know exactly how hard it is to get off of something that is even ruining your life. You can see it's ruining your life and you still can't quit it. So this is part of the reason why it gets harder, is my point, right? And I know it's not easy to just quit drinking overnight, and especially if you've got like 4 earthbounds that are like, come on, we need a drink. Come on, we need a drink. Come on, we need a drink. You won't be able to stop thinking about it. They'll be putting, the minute you wake up, they're going to be like, come on, start drinking. So this is why I say, if you meet somebody who's ready to quit, who's finally had enough, who said, look, I'm tired of flushing my life down the toilet. I'm done. I just want to quit, but I can't stop drinking. That is the time when you get a clearing. Because if you really want to stop, right, and something is going in your ear, you have to get rid of that thing in order for you to really be able to anchor in that. They want to stop you. You know, though, it's not just about drinkers. There's a lot of reasons as to why an earthbound would detach. In fact, I told this story once, so I'll tell it again. It was a very amusing story. I took Aiden to a place called Monkeyland. It's in Plettenberg Bay, South Africa. It's one of my happy places. I just love it so much. Those of you who've been to Plet, I'm sure you've been to Monkeyland and Birds of Eden. It's one of the most lovely places. I enjoy it so much. So we're walking around there. It's a giant forest, right? That's just covered in a huge net. And there's all these monkeys that have free reign to do whatever they please. Well, we're walking around Monkeyland and we pick up an earthbound. I didn't know, because as we're leaving, Aiden starts to feel really weird and tired and kind of grumpy. And I was like, all right, well, we'll just go back to the house and we'll hang out and have a nap. And he had a nap and he was starting to feel a bit meh. Well, anyway, that evening, I said to Aiden, it's time for you to have a bath. And he's like, no, I don't want a bath. And I was like, tough shit, kid, get in the bath. And he was arguing with me. And I was like, you know what? That's it. And I took him to the bath and I scrubbed him down with sea salt. He was giving me such a hard time about the bath. I scrubbed him down head to toe with the sea salt. And he was not happy about it. He was a bit like, the whole time. But anyway, he gets out of the bath and he's feeling better. I sit down an hour later to do clearings and I'm hanging out with my friend Constantine, one of the soul guides. He's Arcturian. And I said to Constantine, can you please check that I'm sovereign? And he goes, yes, you're sovereign. I said, how about everybody else? And he goes, Aiden brought home an earthbound, but it's gone. And I said, Aiden brought home an earthbound? Out of all the people, the little guy picked up an earthbound? And they said, yeah. They said, but it's already been cleared. And I said, how did we clear it? And they said, it was the bath. And I was like, the bath? And then they said the earthbound was a little boy. He was only 6 years old. And I was like, oh, no wonder he was following Aiden. No wonder he attached to Aiden. And he said he didn't like the bath, so he removed himself. He cleared himself, basically. He detached himself because he didn't like the bath. And I laughed my butt off. I was like, no, not even an earthbound little boy likes baths. Like nobody likes baths as a kid. So Adam says just sea salt, no soap. Yes, obviously we use soap too, Adam, but that was not the point. You're not going to get rid of. You can scrub all you want with soap. Soap is not going to work to get rid of my point. So something just told me to give him a sea salt bath, and I did. I even remember I was scrubbing down his arms and legs and everything with the sea salt. And sure enough, they were like, no, not even an earthbound likes baths. So they can remove themselves. If you do something they don't like, they'll remove themselves. In fact, yesterday I did a clearing. We found a bunch of lizards in the house, and this one person, and I checked, and there were no earthbounds attached, like none. There were no earthbounds in the house, and there were no earthbounds attached to the client, and that was kind of weird. I was like, really? Not even one earthbound? And they were like, well, they didn't like the reptilians and the grays. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Like the house was already full. Like the earthbounds were like, no, I'm not going in that weird house. You see, there's aliens in that house. I'm not going in there. So it's just, when it comes to cleansing spaces, you don't even know how often you're cleansing things without even realizing it. Just jumping in the ocean is cleansing. And I asked Zach, I was like, I'm just curious. Like, let's say that you go to the beach and you have a bunch of attachments, right? And then since sea salt works so well, right? Jumping in the ocean, does that have the same effect? And they said, oh, even stronger. The ocean is even more effective than sea salt that you're scrubbing down with in the bath. And I was like, really interesting. So how come everybody that goes to the beach isn't sovereign by the time they leave the beach? And they said, because they wait. They will literally wait on the side for you to come back. So if you jump, you jump in the water, they wait. They stand off somewhere and they wait. And then they come back when you've come out of the water. And I was like, that sounds like a lot of waiting. And they said, yeah, this is why they don't bother with surfers. I giggled to myself. I was like, really? They said, yeah, they'd be spending most of the time waiting. They don't bother with surfers because they're in the water all the time. There's no point to try to attach to a surfer. And I was giggling to myself because I know so many surfers. Aiden's dad is a surfer, and he's probably one of the silliest, happiest people you'll meet. And it's just funny how that works. Like, yeah, I have noticed that surfers tend to be more happy, high vibe people, especially the ones in South Africa, because they're just happy to be there. So, no, the sea salt is strong enough to clear people. And if you're in the water every day, chances are you're going to stay sovereign. They're not going to bother with you. It's too much waiting, too much hassle. They want something easy. They want an easy target. This is why I keep telling you guys, if you smudge the shit out of your house every day, chances are you're not going to have any beasties. Because going back to that mom, like I was telling you about, with a little boy that had the fucking weird earthbound with the snake in his hand, she was smudging every day. There wasn't anything in the house. There was no, demonics, no lizards running around. And they lived in Australia, of all places. My point about Australia, you guys have more stuff down there than anywhere else. And I was curious, why Australia, of all places? And we make jokes about Australia being like the highest level you can go to of intensity if you're incarnating somewhere on Earth. Like they say, like level 10 hardness being born in Australia kind of thing, And so we were wondering, why so many interesting creatures there? Why so many weird elementals? Why so many beasties in Australia? Because a lot of Australia survived the flood. A lot of the Australian outback, too, especially has beings there that don't exist anywhere else in the world. And I'm not talking about animals. I'm talking about the things in the astral that you can't see. Yes, you can grow sage. Yes, good idea, Adam. Growing your own sage is even better. Then it's organic. It's going to be high vibe. You can put like crystals around it and raise the frequency of your sage. You make your own sage bundles when you tie your sage and you make it. I've been making my own sage bundles. They're not as pretty as the ones I get from Shaman's Market. But I do feel that, when you grow them yourself, it's even more effective. You're putting your own love and energy into that sage as it's growing. Sabrina says, will sea salt get rid of imposters? No. The only thing that gets rid of an imposter is a clearing. Imposters are the most challenging thing to get rid of. And the reason for that is because you've given it too long. They've worked their way in. Their claws are in too deep. So if you feel an attack coming on, right? And this is something I teach in my psychic protection course. You'll feel off all of a sudden, right? Like, let's say, for example, that you're just walking down the road and then bam, something hits your grounding. All of a sudden you feel drunk, right? That's when you feel drunk, that's actually you're ungrounded, right? So if you have a feeling that just hits you and you start feeling dizzy or weird, something just took your grounding away. All right. That is the first red flag of a psychic attack, is your grounding going away like that. If you're just, I call it sleep drunk. You ever wake up from a nap and you're feeling like you're kind of wonky? That's that feeling of ungroundedness, right? That's your first clue that something is trying to attack you, because the first thing they do is take your grounding away. Why? Because if you're not well grounded, you're not well tuned in. You're not tuned into your environment. You're not tuned into your body. This is why people drink alcohol so much, because they don't want to be in their body. They don't want to feel their body. So if you start feeling weird, right, that's a psychic attack. If you're just walking down the road and all of a sudden, bam, pain in your head, pain in your side. Let's say you didn't pull a muscle, right? Sometimes, yeah, you might pull a muscle or something, right? But if all of a sudden you just have pain, bam, like that, that's a psychic attack. 100% that's a psychic attack. Pain doesn't just come out of nowhere for no reason. And if you think it does, you've been gaslighted. Okay? So it's very important to really be aware of your feeling in your body, right? So if you have any nausea, any pain, or any feeling of that drunk sensation, that is an attack happening. So the minute that happens, that's when you call in your gatekeeper. Your gatekeeper is probably usually standing right behind you. Mine and Fergus is standing right behind me right now. He's always standing behind me. But my point is, that's when you call in your gatekeeper and you say, I need a clearing now. Please remove anything that is not of the highest of light from my field immediately. Please get rid of anything that does not serve me to my highest good. You have to ask immediately. As soon as something doesn't feel right, that's when you're like, back up, right? Like, that's when you need to start asking for help. Because if you leave it too long, if you don't ask for help, you're not giving them consent to help you. If you have an understanding, like I have an understanding with my guide Fergus, that if I'm out in public, even if I forgot to ask that day, if I forgot to say, hey, I'm going out in public, can you please protect me when I'm out in public? We have an understanding that it took time to develop that and to express, yes, every day when I go out in public, thank you for clearing me and for making sure that nothing comes into my field. But on occasion, something can come in that he didn't even notice. They're very clever. They're very sneaky, especially with technology. I had an earthbound throw a weird device into my etheric and run away. And it felt like I had the spins, like I was in a washing machine. I don't know what it was. I felt so sick. I had no idea why. And it was just one device was thrown in my etheric. That was it. That's all it took. So when something like that is not right, when you can feel just off all of a sudden, that's when you call in your gatekeeper and you say, please clear anything from me that does not serve me to my highest good. If you don't feel any change, if you feel no different, it might be that something came in that your gatekeeper doesn't know how to remove. I have a friend of mine, I'm not going to say who does clearings for people, who on occasion sends me the most difficult clients that they can't clear. Why? Because their guide can clear certain things. But when it comes to technology, especially technology brought in by the Greys, they can't do it. They can't get rid of it. So I actually have healers that I work with where they help me with some of my difficult clients, and I help them with some of their difficult clients. But the reason we do this is because some of my guides are trained to do things that their guides are not, and vice versa. So we have a very specialist team that knows how to remove these attachments and implants and, you know, all these little beasties and things that we can find. Not every soul guide knows how to do it. So it is very important for you to really assess how you feel. Somebody asked how often you should book a clearing. When you feel that you can't get rid of something on your own is when you book a clearing. So let's say like you're walking down the street using the same analogy and something hits your grounding, right? And then all of a sudden you start feeling nausea. That's a second red flag. So the grounding going is a sign of psychic attack. But then when you start feeling the nausea is what happens when you feel something affecting your frequency in a very rapid way, very quickly. So if your vibration goes up rapidly or starts plummeting rapidly, that is what creates that nausea feeling in your stomach. So if you're very high vibe and something very low vibe is trying to scratch its way into your etheric, you're going to start feeling nauseous because it's starting to lower and drop your frequency. So nausea is one of the biggest things. If you guys have taken psychedelics, you know that mushies give you nausea, right? Zoom. That's why. As soon as you take those mushies, your vibration goes flying through the roof. And that's why everybody gets extreme nausea when they take psychedelics. It's like car sickness. Exactly, Sarah. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're car sick. I was on safari. We went to one of my favorite places in South Africa for a walkabout and things. And we were just kind of having fun at this. It's an animal rehabilitation center. And as you kind of drive around, they have like safari vehicles that you're sitting in. I got an email from a disgruntled client. There was an angry client that messaged me saying she felt no change afterward and felt like the whole thing was bullshit. You know, some people do if they feel no change and they get very angry about it. So this woman wrote me an email, and as I'm sitting in the back of the safari vehicle on holiday, I don't know what I was thinking, working in the back of a safari vehicle. I go and read the email, and as soon as I read the email, boom, grounding was gone. Boom, nausea. Boom, pain in my head. It felt like a vice. It took 30 seconds for my grounding to go, for my nausea to kick in, and for my head. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, no. I knew immediately what it was. It was a lizard. It used the email as a cord. So as soon as I read that email, boom, I had a cord with the client, and then the entity used that cord to come and attack me for doing the clearing in the first place. So as I'm sitting in the back of the safari vehicle, getting hit with this wave of nausea to the point where I feel like I could easily start throwing up, I calm myself. I start establishing my grounding, and I start talking to Fergus. And they look at me like, people in the back of the safari vehicle are looking at me like she's talking to herself. But I didn't care. I was like, Fergus, there's something attached to me. There's something attached right now. It's trying to get into my etheric field. Can you please get rid of it? And then I didn't feel any change. And I was like, motherfucker, sorry. I was so mad. And I was like, all right. So I messaged my team, and I texted my team, the Avengers group. And I was like, guys, I'm trying to self-clear. It's not working. Something is here. And sure enough, my team, the Avengers team that we have, they saw my text, and they got back to me, and they said, we're clearing you right now. We're sending in the crew. And I felt the nausea just boom. It was gone. The nausea was there, and then boop, gone. And I was like, oh, it was like this, right? And I knew immediately that I had been cleared because the nausea is gone. I'm like, finally, thank God. Okay, whew, right? So then I look over at Aiden's dad, who's sitting next to me in the safari vehicle, and he's looking at me like this. And I'm like, what? What? And he didn't say anything at first. And we get out of the safari vehicle later, and I said, why did you give me that look? And he goes, I was just kind of minding my own business. I was looking around, looking at the wild dogs off in the corner. And all of a sudden, I get this sick feeling. He goes, I felt like I was on a boat with really bad seasickness. He's like, I don't know what happened. He's like, all of a sudden, I felt like I was going to throw up so bad. And I look over, and you're doing this, like you're talking to someone. And I'm like, he's like, I knew immediately that you were doing something. And then you got on your phone and you're texting. And he goes, and as you're texting, I start feeling sicker. And I was wondering what was going on. And he goes, I was about to say something to the guy up front to pull over so I can get out and kind of have a moment so I don't puke in the car, basically. And it was gone like that. He's like, as soon as I'm about to tell the guy, hey, can you pull over because I'm about to get sick, it's gone. And he was like, what the hell? I was like, I know the nausea. It was bad, wasn't it? And he goes, what the hell caused that? He goes, it literally felt like I was seasick on a boat in the middle of the ocean. And I was like, that was a lizard. Sorry, but that was a lizard. He goes, where did the lizard come from? And I read an email. He's like, seriously? You read an email and you picked up a lizard? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you're not allowed to work while we're on safari. No more working. He was like joking around about it. He's going to take my phone away. He's like, no. It's like, you're not working. No more lizards on safari. That's it. If you see any lizards, it better be a crocodile. Like, he felt the exact same thing that I felt. And he felt it leave at the exact same moment that I felt it leave. That's why he was looking at me like, what the hell was that? So funny. So this is why there's a lot of people that were not believers until they start hanging out with me. And then they're like, holy crap. So my point in all of this, yes, somebody said this is why you cut cords. Yes, this is why you have to cut cords every day. Because this is something that I didn't even think about, right? This is something I actually learned from a case a couple weeks ago, where this person picked up entities through cords on somebody else. Like, let's say that you have a cord with your dad, right? Let's say that it's like one of those people that you're like, you know, you get along sometimes, you might not get along. It depends on the day kind of thing, right? So let's say it could be a healthy cord, it could not be a healthy cord. It depends on the situation, right? So if you go and have a conversation with this person one day and they're sovereign, they're fine, everything is good, right? And you're having a good conversation with them and then you leave. And then the next day, you get psychic attacked and you don't know why. And you're like, but I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I had no conversations with anybody. I didn't read any angry emails. Like, where did this thing come from? You know what we found out? That because if your dad, that person who you have a cord with, picked up an entity after you saw them, they could have been sovereign when you saw them. But then let's say that you went home and then that person went out to the bar that night. So you have a cord with that individual. You were fine seeing that individual during the day because, I mean, they weren't drunk at that moment. They were sovereign at that moment. It's probably very unlikely if they're a drinker that they were sovereign. But you know what I mean? Like, the situation was fine, right? And then you go home. They go out and do something naughty, go out and get drunk or whatever. They pick up a lizard. They go home. And then what happens to you? How did you get attacked? Well, the lizard saw, oh, look at cords you've got with all these people. And then they can look at every one of the cords and to who the cord is attached. So if you keep cords with people who cannot stay sovereign, those entities can use those cords to get to you. And when I learned that, I felt like this huge light bulb went off in my head. And I was like, my God, no wonder. So even if you're not going out to the bar drinking, you can still pick up, you know, stuff from the bar, so to speak, through the cords that you share with the person who went to the bar. And that blew my mind. I was like, my God. It's like, it's like that connection that we all have as a collective. You know, we joke about, like, what is it, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon? I'm pretty sure with entities, it's like 2 degrees. Because of all the cords that we all share, all the beasties interconnected with through everybody. And that blew my mind when I learned that, because there's just so much to learn in this work. I've been doing this work for over 2 years now, and I still learn something new every single day. So cut your damn cords every day. Get your selenite, cut your cords, visualize cords melting away in the shower, whatever it is that you do to cut cords. Make sure that you're being consistent about this. Carolyn just said yes. Adrian, Angelica, sorry, I'm reading this wrong. Sorry. I had it on small view. Here we go. Yes, Angelina explained this and showed everyone in one big web. So the same thing happens when you go to a healer, for example, right? If you have a healer who's been compromised, the entities are using that healer as a way to connect to every single one of the people they're working on. So this is why you wonder why healers get compromised so much. This is why. Because not only can they use the healer, because they can feed off of the healer too, yeah. But in most cases, it ends up more like a Typhoid Mary situation. And for those of you who don't know who Typhoid Mary was, it was an individual who was unable to get sick from typhoid, and yet she was a carrier. So every person who she was a chef. She went from house to house as a home cook. And every time she went to a new house as a home cook, the whole family would die. And nobody knew why. They would all die of typhoid. She went through family after family after family. And she just must have thought, I wonder what she believed about this. Because even at her court date, she was in denial about it. Even on the court date, I mean, she must have thought she was the most unlucky woman in the world. Because every single time she got a new job, that family would be dead within like a month. And then she'd have to go and find a new job, right? So Typhoid Mary situations happen because you have a healer who doesn't know they've been compromised. So they use the healer as a way to feed off of every single one of the clients that goes to that healer. They're not attacking the healer. They don't want the healer to feel sick because then the healer's not going to go out doing clearings. The healer is not going to be out trying to heal people if the healer feels like shit, right? So they leave the healer alone. They're not trying to make the healer unwell. They're not trying to ruin the life of the healer because then the food goes away. And we have found this with attunements as well. Like, this is one of the reasons why we are so concerned about these black webs that spread out. Because you can even go and get an attunement and then get hundreds more cords attached to you through the attunement. So, and the crazy thing is, I used to love Reiki. Like, I still do. I love Reiki, but now every time I go for even a massage, I'm pretty much begging Fergus, like, please make sure this person is clear and sovereign. Please make sure that all cords afterward are cleared. I don't want any cords. I don't want any contracts or agreements with this individual. Because even just going, right, we found that there was one person who went for an attunement and felt like crap afterward, and they didn't understand why, and they felt off ever since their attunement. It had been a couple of weeks, and they were like, I haven't felt right ever since that attunement. And we go in, and what do we find? It was like a black web with the person at the center, with the Reiki master who did the attunement at the center. Every single person that person had attached to them, it was like a contract. So when you got the attunement, you ended up with a dark contract with the entity that was attached to the healer. That was one of the most disturbing things that I have ever learned from this work. That you can actually go in with the intention of learning how to be a healer, with having an attunement to open up your chakras so you have more of that beautiful, loving energy from source flowing through you. You go and have contact with this wonderful teacher who you think is an amazing person and probably is an amazing person. You get an attunement and then you go home feeling like shit, not knowing why. And then you start feeling exhausted and drained for weeks, not knowing why. And that client booked a clearing with us and we traced it back. We wanted to know. We were curious. I'm like, this contract, I said, is it made in the dream state? No, it was made in the waking state. It was made in the waking state? Really? Why? If it's made in the waking state, it means you were awake when you made the contract. Those are the most rare dark contracts of all. Unless, of course, you're in the military. As soon as you join the military, boom, dark contract. As soon as you sign your paperwork, I have not found even one soldier who doesn't have a dark contract. Not one. Every single soldier who joins the military gets a dark contract. As soon as you sign your name on the dotted line, boom, they got you. Right? But when it comes to, and I said, but you don't sign a contract with being a Reiki healer. How did that work? If you get a dark contract for signing up with the military, how do you get a dark contract just from agreeing to be attuned? And that's because you're giving consent. Because you're paying for the course constitutes giving consent. So just signing up for the course was allowing that person who was compromised by the dark entity, it was a big fucking lizard, of course. They're the ones who love contracts the most. They're contracting everybody. So this is why it happens, through agreements. You have to make an agreement. This is where they get you. And those waking state agreements are probably the most shocking of all. Like, to be awake when you're making an agreement with a dark entity, usually it's happening while you're under the influence of psychedelics. But sometimes it can just happen through a conversation. I had a client just yesterday who I did a clearing on. He knows who he is. And he was having a conversation with all of these entities in his house. And they were coming in. He's a full-blown medium. He can see them and he can hear them. So they come in and they're like, oh, yeah, we're here to save the world. You're going to help us save the world. And he's like, really? And they're like, yeah, you're going to save the world with us. And he's like, I live in the middle of nowhere. Like, it'd be one thing if it was like a politician or a celebrity, you know, somebody with some pull in life, but they just picked some random Joe Schmo in the middle of somewhere in some small town in America and being like, guess what? We're going to save the world, buddy. He was, I don't know if he believed it, but he was like, okay, all right, whatever you say. Okay, cool. Let's go save the world. You know what happened? He signed a dark contract. By having a conversation with these beings, by entertaining them. I was like, seriously? Like, you can make an agreement, a dark contract, just by having a conversation? Yeah, you could. I was like, why did they tell him that this guy is going to save the world? And they're like, because they were using the human ego. If you have an inflated sense of self-importance to the point where you feel like, yeah, I could save the world. Entities are like, gotcha. So this is what happens. They come in and they trick you. They manipulate you. Just don't talk to them. Do not talk to them. If a random alien shows up in your house, I know it can be really exciting and interesting, you guys. I mean, if you think about it, how many of us would like to have a conversation with an alien? I mean, I had one for 2 hours yesterday. It's easy for me to say. But if you knew that you were actually talking to a galactic in your house, most of us would be like, all right. You've seen the movie Paul, right? Right? I love that movie, Paul. I'm not a fan of the Greys. You guys know how I feel about Greys. And yet Paul is one of the funniest movies. I loved the movie Paul. I thought it was hilarious. But if you think about it, how many people would be friendly with it? How many people would be like, oh, there's a Grey in my house. Cool, bro. Want to hang out, watch a movie? Like, how many of them would be like, hey, let's hang out. Let's have some fun. Let's have a puff. Whatever, bro. Like, let's have it, you know. How many of us want to be friends with aliens? Most of us, right? Don't talk to them. If they just show up in your house and they're like, oh, we're finding you very interesting. No, get the fuck out. Go. Tell them to leave. He thought that they were friendly. Yeah, they were friendly while you're awake. When you're asleep, they're experimenting on you. This is why you have so many people out there that are like, oh, the Greys are so nice. No, they're not. No, they are not. There is one type of Grey that is nice. One. And it's the Zeta Reticulans. That's it. And you know how often the Zeta Reticulans interfere with humans? Never. Never. The Zeta Reticulans are like the custodians of Earth. They are here to help Gaia. They are not here to mess with humans. They are not here to have conversations with you. So if you're talking to a galactic who popped into your house and it's not one of your guides, do not have a conversation with that being. Tell it to get the hell out. I don't care how nice it's being. I don't care if it's telling you that you have to save the world and it's, you know, you're our only hope, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, no, no. Tell it to get out. Do not have conversations with it. There are people out there that have conversations with entities. There is one person, his name starts with an A. You guys have been contacting. I've been tagged like 5 times a day for the last couple days all about this person. And they keep saying, oh, you got to work with this person. No, absolutely not. Why? Because that person spends most of their time talking to dark entities. No, I have no interest in talking to dark entities. I have absolutely, they don't do anything except lie. They lie, they deceive, they manipulate. There is no point in having a conversation with them. So even the ones that come in and they're like, oh, we're just curious. What are you doing here? You know, like, no, nope. Say, I'm sorry, but you're not welcome. You need to leave. I specifically did not say the name for a reason. I'm not saying it. I don't like to comment on other people's work. And that's why I will not be doing it ever again. My point, though, is that no, you cannot trust galactics as much as people think that they can. There are so many regressive entities on this planet that are pretending to be benevolent beings that are not. So your discernment is the most important thing that you can have. And you need to have really strong discernment. I'm not talking like, you know, using common sense, okay? You need to learn how to discern between a being that is one of your guides. You need to know how to connect with your guides. You need to get to recognize your guides. Because otherwise they can come in and pretend to be your guides. They can come in to pretend to be loved ones. And they always have some kind of a role for you. They're like, oh, I need you. No, they don't. If a galactic ever tells you that they need you for something, that is one of the biggest red flags that you can have. Oh, I need you for this. No, they don't. They do not need humans for anything. We humans do need them on occasion for help with things like reptilians and stuff. But no galactic is going to show up in your house and be like, you're my only hope. Not a chance. So no, I do not talk to entities. I will never talk to entities. I have no interest in talking to them. I have done so in the past without realizing that I was talking to them. And it was probably one of the most awkward, uncomfortable conversations I have ever had in my entire life. So keep in mind that entities can lie. That is what they do best. What they cannot do is fake their frequency. I know that some of them can try. In fact, even the smartest and most powerful of them all, which are the archons, are very good at mimicking high frequency, but they can't keep it up. It's like somebody who is, you know, trying to be an Olympic athlete and they can run really fast, but they can only run really fast for like 3 feet and then they fall on their face. Okay? They cannot maintain a high frequency. They cannot control their low vibration for that long. So even the most intelligent, most conniving, most sneaky, most manipulative entities on this planet cannot maintain a fake frequency. So you have to learn how to discern between something that is high frequency and something that is not. And you can tell. You're just feeling it. Remember we talked about the nausea? That's your little internal detector, right, for low frequency. So if you're low frequency, your detector isn't working as well because there's not that stark of a contrast between the two. So this is why the higher frequency you get, the more that little alarm system starts to work. The stronger it will get. And the longer you can stay sovereign, the longer you will start to know. It's easier to discern when you're not sovereign. My mom can tell. My mom, of all people. My mom, who's a muggle boomer, who has no interest in most of these things that I talk about. My mom knows when she's lost sovereignty like that. In fact, my mom will call me in a panic going, check me. She put it all in caps, check me. My mom knows she's under attack. How? Because she just learned. She knows what being sovereign feels like. And that way, when something comes in and takes that from you, you know immediately. So you have to learn. Most people are not sovereign. Most people go their whole lives without being sovereign. And yeah, you might cleanse yourself on occasion. You might go jump in the ocean and you'll feel amazing. And you're going to feel great for a few days. This is one of the reasons why so many people go to the shore and why they so straight to the beach. They're like, I need a beach day so bad. They don't know. They need a clearing is what they need. They think they need to de-stress. They feel, oh, I'm exhausted. I'm burned out. I need to go to the beach. I need to go for a swim. Subconsciously, they're like, you need to get a fucking clearing. You need to get rid of all the crap that's on you. So we clear ourselves all the time. But the problem is we pick up new stuff all the time because we're not aware of how easy it is to lose sovereignty when you go into shady places. It says Muggle Boomer. I would have gotten a text if she's watching right now. She would have been like, what? That's how I know my mom isn't watching right now. She's like, I'm not a Muggle. Not anymore. If my mom can be educated to the point of recognizing that she's not sovereign, I guarantee anybody else could. Anybody else could. So you really have to get to know what it feels like to be sovereign, to recognize when something comes into your etheric field, and that's when you call on your gatekeeper and you ask him to remove it. Apparently, my mom thinks that I'm her gatekeeper because she doesn't even bother. My mom just texted me now. She doesn't even bother, like calling in her own gatekeeper. In fact, I even had to send Fergus the other day. I'm like, Fergus, can you go and clear her, please? So it's just one of those things, In fact, I asked one time, I was like, how come my mom picked up the reptilian? And they're like, well, it's because she's your mom. I was like, oh. It's like I'm an astral prosecutor for like getting hit by the astral mafia. They're sending lizard mafia people to my mom. Part of the job, I guess. Can you explain how some of these dark entities are low frequency, but still somehow higher than humans on the scale so that they cannot be seen by most? So what keeps you anchored into 3D? Why are we in 3D and the beasties are all in 4D, 5D, etc., whatever it is? Some of them are in 5D, but not most of them are in 4D. That is because of the artificial quarantine that we're in. That's technology based. You know how like on TikTok, right? They have filters that make you change your appearance. There was one lady whose TikTok filter glitched and they found out people were following her for years thinking she's like 22 years old, and then the filter glitched and it turns out she's like 65. Right? And everybody was like, holy shit. It's like that. There's a filter that's been superimposed over another filter. So you're not seeing the natural world as it's supposed to seem. Everybody else, all around us, are in 5D. We are the only ones in 3D. This is something that a lot of people don't understand, so I'm happy to explain real quick. Since we are the only ones in 3D, this is why space looks so empty, right? But it's not empty. They're all in higher frequencies. They're out of phase, basically. So when you are vibrating on the same frequency, you're able to see each other, you're able to communicate with each other, you're able to perceive, you can touch things, right? So when you go into the 4D astral, somebody just said, I thought beasties were 4D, not 5D. Where do you think the Orion Wars happened? The Orion Wars happened in 5D. Reptilians were going from planet to planet, eating, decimating everything in sight for thousands of years. That happened in 5D. So yeah, beasties exist in 5D too. Yes, absolutely. Yep. We were in 5D during that whole shit show we had with the reptilians, chasing us from planet to planet to planet, basically eating everything in sight. That was 5D. Yeah. So somebody says, so the idea that 5D is the perfect paradise is a new age lie? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There's less beasties there because many of them are in 4D. But to think that all beasties will be gone when we hit 5D, especially the galactic beasties? No. In fact, you know what's interesting? You're going to see them everywhere. This is one of the things that you're going to have to come to terms with and understand. The Soul Guides have explained this. In fact, even, the Tegetans were explaining this. When they were asking about 5D, they would say to the humans, do you think you're ready for 5D? And they were like, oh yeah, I was born ready for 5D. I would love to be in 5D. I'm in 5D right now. You're like, oh yeah, okay. So where's all the beasties then? And you see all the entities around us? I joke with Adriana. I'm like, you have 1 foot in 3D and 1 foot in 5D. Because Adriana can see everything that's happening around her. She can see the galactics in 4D. She can see the beasties in 4D. She can even see galactics that pop in 5D. So technically, you're interdimensional, right? And your perception is usually locked into 3D. But if you have expanded that perception, you can pick up multiple frequencies at once. It's like instead of being tuned to one radio station, you can tune into any radio station you choose, even simultaneously choose 3 simultaneous radio stations all at once and be able to tune in. That is how the more advanced mediums work. Do you think most people are able to function like that? One of the questions they asked on the from Cosmic Agency when they were talking to the Tegetans was, do you think old ladies are ready to see succubi on their way to church on Sunday? Because beings in 5D can see entities. They can see all of it. So for those who don't really understand how this works, and I'm just going to explain really quick, 3D is physical, 4D is astral. But if you're locked into 4D, 4D looks physical. So every dimension is technically physical when you are locked into that frequency. Okay? So 4D for beings that are in 4D is a physical place. It's a physical realm. And if they're locked into 3D, if an entity is so well locked into 3D, that's when they can manipulate objects and move things and throw shit around. Usually that's a reptilian or a very powerful earthbound that's able to do that. So 3D is physical. 4D is the astral that we go to when we sleep, when we take psychedelics, when we die. That's because our consciousness raises to 4D, right? So when you're locked into 4D, it looks physical. That's why the earthbounds don't know they're dead. That gentleman who was walking around, that earthbound gentleman that was walking around as a homeless person, picking up cans in the astral, that is why he was creating those cans. And for him, that's how he could pick them up. In 4D, he manifested those cans and he could physically pick them up because he was locked into that frequency. So this is how you end up with things like ghost phones. People talk about ghost phones and how ghosts can manifest phones. Then you see phones like in their hands and they're talking on the phone. Yes, they can do that. If an earthbound wants an iPhone, all they have to do is be like, bam, iPhone. Oh, cool, thanks. Now I have an iPhone. Yeah. You could literally make a YouTube channel for dead people, just dead people to watch, and they could watch it on their little ghost iPhone. I know how nuts I sound about this, but this is how the astral works. If you're astral projecting and you're locked into 4D and you want a crown on your head for, I don't know, it's just the first thing that pops in my head, right? So you say, I want a crown, a golden emerald crown on my head. Boom, there it is. You manifested it. 4D, it works like that, where you snap your finger and boom, something you want manifests. So this is why we say be careful what you say, because even in 3D, if you say something, you can manifest it in 4D. This is why I'm always telling you guys to visualize protection, suits of armor, invisibility cloaks, whatever it is, because if you believe, even if you're saying it in 3D, even if you're visualizing it in 3D, you manifest it in 4D through belief. So 4D is where we go when we die. And the same thing, like the lower end of 4D is where the beasties mostly reside. This is where the hell realms and all the lower horrible shit is, right? That's the lowest end of 4D. Where do you go when you're in earthbound? That's like the middle of 4D. That's like purgatory, for example. That's when you're kind of wandering around. When you end up in a death loop, or if you end up in a dark void somewhere, that's like a limbo. Okay, that's like limbo. If those of you who know what I'm talking about, especially you Catholics out there, limbo is a real place too. Just like lower astral could be considered purgatory. So when you cross over and you enter the light, when you see them opening this beautiful doorway and crossing you over, where do you go? You go to the high end of 4D. So going to the high end of 4D allows you to go to the healing place. You go to the schools. You go to all those nice places, right? And then you incarnate again back into 3D if you choose to do so. So what about the galactics? What about those who are in 5D? When you die in 5D, do you go to 4D? No, you go to 6D. 6D is the dimension that people who die in 5D go. You always go up in frequency, right? So if you die in 5D, your version of heaven, your version of that is going to be in 6D. So I hope I'm explaining this for you guys well. 5D is where you are supposed to be naturally. 3D, that frequency was designed just for animals. Animals were supposed to be left alone. They were supposed to be, kind of left to their own devices, so to speak. So they have time to develop their consciousness and have an experience. So 3D was originally designed just for animals. So animals originally were not supposed to see entities that exist in 4D. Because remember, right? When you're locked in a certain frequency, let's say that you're locked into 3D, you can see 3D, 2D, 1D. If you're in 4D, you can see 4D, 3D, 2D, 1D. If you're in 5D, you can see 5D, 4D, 3D, 2D. Do you get it? So you can see the one you're locked into and everything below it. You cannot see what is above you. Okay? So think of it, it's like this. Think of it like a totem pole. If you're looking down, it's easier to perceive things than it is when you're looking up. Same thing goes for this, okay? So when you're locked into a certain frequency and you're trying to increase that frequency, that allows you to have an easier time connecting with your guides because your guides are up here and your frequency is down here. So the name of the game for most mediums is to get their vibration up so they can reach the point of connecting with their guides. Then they can hear their guides better. They can see their guides. They can even sometimes feel their guides. I can feel Fergus tingling my forehead and things like that, right? That is when you're really tuned into the frequency of your guides. And some people wonder, for a long time, I was able to connect with my guides and it felt so intense. And now when I'm there around, I hardly feel them. And they think, I wonder why I don't feel my guides very often. We go in and guess what we found out? If your frequency is going up and it's like trying to reach that of your guides, right? And you really are pushing it up to the point where you're like, yes, I finally made it. Their vibration is going to feel really intense. Because your vibration was struggling to get there, right? So theirs is here. And when you finally meet it and you connect, you're thinking, you're probably like shivering. You got chills all over your body. You're getting hot. You're like, oh my God. Why is it so intense when I connect with my guides? And then after a month or so of doing that every day, you don't feel that intensity. You don't feel the goosebumps. You don't feel that whoa feeling that you initially felt. Why? Because you're not doing this. You're doing this. So when you have to push and get your frequency up high, that is what creates the intensity because you're not used to being there. That's not where you're kind of comfortable being because it's such an intense energy. You had to work your way up there and you had to pretty much exhaust yourself to hold it at that frequency. But after a while, it gets easier to hold that frequency and it gets less of a dramatic change when you connect. So some people later on feel, I don't know if I'm feeling my guide. And it's like, no, you are feeling your guide. It's just that you're not feeling the intensity of your guide anymore because your frequency is going up. I'm probably giving you guys way too much information. I'm basically giving you like a mediumship course for free right now. But I'm hoping I'm explaining this in a way that you guys understand because everything, remember what Nikola Tesla said, everything is about energy, frequency, and vibration. He was not kidding. Everything in existence, this whole hologram shit show we're in is all about energy, frequency, and vibration. So the more you learn to understand how all these frequencies, combat each other, how they flow, if you learn about how to balance it, it's like the cheat codes of life. You learn things. You learn how to control the matrix in ways that you weren't able to do so before. So it's all about, this whole 3D matrix that we're in. It's not natural. This is the result of, God, it would take me an hour to explain why we're in 3D, about the whole Tiamat cataclysm and why they had to put this in a quarantine. And it's all down to the Orion Wars. We're the only ones that are still in the Orion Wars, okay? Everybody else, remember how I was talking about, how the lizards were chasing us from planet to planet, eating everybody, and that was happening in 5D, right? That's not happening anymore. Why? Because they're all here. This is one of the reasons why the reptilians were such a formidable race, is because they moved their army all as one. They would go to one planet, destroy the whole planet. Then they get up, move, go to another planet, destroy that whole planet, right? Well, they pulled that shit here and they're all stuck here. So the battle that we had, the whole Orion Wars thing, the whole Tiamat cataclysm, that was the last, I wouldn't say the very last major battle we had, because we had the whole thing that happened in Nuremberg in the 1500s. I've explained that as well. That was when they were taking down the last of the Draco supply lines. So that big space battle that people report seeing, those of you who have seen Ancient Aliens and they talk about the big space battle they had over Nuremberg in the 1500s, that's why. That was when the Engans and the Andromedans and some of the Tegetans came together and they destroyed the last of the reptilian ships. They can't get off world anymore. So they are stuck here. So they want to keep it. This is, if you notice, right, the Galactics don't seem too much of a rush to get rid of the quarantine. They're a bit like, we just kind of here and let them figure it out. That's why, because all the reptilians are here. The Orion Wars pretty much ended for all the other galactics on almost every other planet except here. So why did they keep us locked up with the reptilians? Well, because we were created by them. We were kind of their little experiment. They wanted to create a food source that they could control and breed much faster and easier. Remember, we were talking about procreation yesterday and how the galactics procreate. The galactics plan to procreate. There's never an oops, right? They make a very solid plan about when and why they're going to have children. Here on Earth, it's a little different, right? Well, it's because we were designed that way. We were literally designed to procreate as much as possible. They were creating us like cattle. I hate to say it, but people like to romanticize it. And no, that's the truth. We were created as an experiment, as a food source, and we still haven't changed. And yeah, we galactics and other people, people are taking these bodies because it's the only one that's available to us. If this is the only option, this is what we're stuck with. Right? Bad arches and all. If there were better options, this is one of the reasons why galactics are fed up. It's not even just about life on Earth. It's about having a human body. Planned obsolescence was one of the key factors in our design figure, okay? They designed us with planned obsolescence in mind. Why do you think galactics can live 1,000 years? Most Tegetans live over 500 to 700 years. Why do humans live 1/10 of that? Because they didn't want us getting too smart. The longer you live, the more intelligent you might get. The more memory you retain. They are able to brainwash. They are able to erase history after one generation. That's all it takes. Because one generation to us is 20 years. So it's all about control and manipulation. And, we romanticized why humans are here for a lot of reasons. But the truth is, we're here because we were created to be here. So Jay says, was 3i Atlas a spaceship? No, it was sent. It was basically a big flying crystal. It was sent intentionally. It was basically a giant flying crystal. If you notice, our sun went crazy as it went around the sun. That's why. It was actually powering up our sun and making our sun more powerful. It was souping up our sun to help with the shift. So no, 3i Atlas was basically like a giant crystal flying through space. Just reading through some of the questions before I head off for the weekend. Somebody asked if they are the Anunnaki. Anunnaki is just an old word for extraterrestrial. Anunnaki is the word for non-human. So we had humans and we had Anunnaki. That was their old word for galactic, basically. So everybody that was basically galactic back then fits into that category. All of them. The reptilians, all the Pleiadians, you name it. Everybody was Anunnaki. If you weren't human, you were Anunnaki. This is why so many people have different opinions about the Anunnaki and why they have different beliefs about who they were and all that stuff. All the stuff that you see in Sumeria is made up. And I don't mean made up by humans. I mean, it was literally made up by reptilians. I know how crazy I sound saying this. I can literally heal my ego cringes every time I say it. But no, it's true. We were actually, I forget who said it. But they said that if those texts had actually been true, they would have been written on gold rather than mud. So those clay tablets where they claim that, Zachariah Sitchin and all that got all this information about how we were created and all of that stuff, it was the original Bible. They needed a reason to explain how we got here that wasn't the truth. They knew that people weren't going to accept religion. They needed to have some kind of an acceptance for the people who were more scientific based. And they would rather have you believe anything at all but the truth. They would rather provide you 1,000 different options, right? And none of them are the truth. So this is basically what happened. All of that was done as a way of lying to humans. They were trying to create an explanation as to how we got here without telling us the truth that we were created in freaking laboratories. And we were created in Atlantean laboratories. We are a hodgepodge of about 22 different galactic races that they kind of created this amalgamation of, and that's where humans came from. So this is something that I get a lot of slack for. People do not like hearing that the whole Sumerian tablets thing was made up, but it was an original Bible. It was created to confuse people. And unfortunately, when you don't have as many options out there, because they suppress the truth. You guys see this everywhere you go, that they suppress the truth. They would rather have you believe anything else but the truth. So they just keep pumping out fake stories all the time and all this nonsense. Yes, exactly. Bringers of the Dawn. If you want to know about Earth history, Bringers of the Dawn is one of my favorites. It was channeled through Pleiadians by Barbara Marciniak, and it is spot on to what I was told during my own astral projection by my guides. Last, I wanted to know about crop circles. Crop circles are markers. A lot of people think that they are messages, but they're actually timeline markers. Some of them are, anyway. Sometimes they're messages. Sometimes they do that just to kind of give humans a bit of a whoa, But I was actually asking the guides about this, and they explained that they're timeline markers to make sure that they got back. It's like a stamp to make sure that they got back to the right place and time. Because sometimes they jump. There are infinite parallel realities out there. And if they want to visit another timeline, it could be a timeline about anything. Like there could be timelines where the Titanic didn't sink. There could be timelines where World War II never happened. There could be timelines where, Atlantis was never destroyed. There are infinite timelines available. And sometimes the galactics like to jump between those timelines for different reasons. So crop circles are actually like a marker to let them know that they made it back to the original timeline that they left from. So it's kind of like a bookmark, so to speak. We're talking about crop circles, Kadriana. Somebody said, are they dug up dinosaurs? Are they real? Yeah, they're real. They're not reptilians. No relation whatsoever. Dragons, dinosaurs, and Draco have absolutely no relation between the three of them whatsoever. None. How did dinosaurs get here? Dinosaurs were created in a lab, just like we were. They do experiments all the time. They create life all the time as an experiment just to see what's going to happen. So they create life and then they destroy life. And yeah, some people consider it to be like playing God. I do. I consider it to be like playing God. If you're going to create a whole race for yourself that you're just curious how it's going to go. We looked into the creation of the Draco. In fact, they were created in another universe. We had to go and look in an entirely different Akashic records because they weren't even from this universe originally. So we had to go to the other universe's Akashic records book. You can only imagine how big that book is to even find out about how reptilians were created. And you know how they were created? They were created just like in Jurassic Park. Instead of taking DNA from, deceased creatures and bringing them back, they created reptilians the exact same way they created everything else. There's an ancient race of light beings that decided to take DNA and use DNA as kind of like a puzzle. And they took those pieces and they created a being with it. And then they created more beings with it. And they thought, well, these are really cool. I'm going to create more. So they just kept creating more and more interesting types of beings. And they were originally going to release them on their own planet and be like, okay, you can have this planet. This is yours. Now you get to have your experience. That's what they were trying to do, right? Is they were just trying to create living avatars, an experience for light beings to use as a vessel. So that's how all life was created. But these master scientists who did this in this other reality, this other universe, if you remember what happened to Jurassic Park, that's what happened to the master geneticists that created them. They were all eaten. They got out and they ate their creators. I will be going much more in depth into the book that I plan on putting all this into. Why? Because I'm sick of reading bullshit online about how they were created. I have had so many people say that the dinosaurs and reptilians are the same beings, that this was originally their planet and that we invaded their planet. Bullshit. This was actually the Neanderthal planet. There were Neanderthals and Sasquatches here before anybody else. So technically, they're the only natives on this whole planet. If you want to talk about who's originally a native here, we're talking the Neanderthals and the Sasquatches. That's it. They're the only hominids that originally can claim this as their planet. So humans are not from here originally. Reptilians are absolutely not even from this freaking universe originally. So they're certainly not the original inhabitants of this planet either. So reading all of this crap that people puts out is the reason I'm writing the book with Adriana, because we're just tired of people putting out nonsense. It's ridiculous. Some of it is just, I hear it and it actually makes me mad because I'm like, stop lying to people. So this is why I'm putting this information into the book, and we're getting, it's just taking time because there's so much information in there. It's unbelievable. So no, reptilians have no relation whatsoever to dinosaurs or dragons. They are not created in the same way at all. Alexander said, are Sasquatches still around? Yes, they are all over the place. Very much so. We have Todd Stay. If you ever want to see a real Sasquatch, check out the movie. It's a documentary. It's called, oh my God, what is it? As soon as I'm about to say it, it disappeared. Anyway, it was made by Todd Stand. Discovering Bigfoot. That was the word. Discovering Bigfoot on YouTube. Todd Standing is a friend of mine. He's been on the podcast a few times. And he actually spent 4 days sleeping in a ghillie suit in a river to get those images. Not even kidding. 4 days in sub-zero temperatures, sleeping in a waterproof ghillie suit, sleeping in a river so they couldn't smell him. That is how Todd got those images. And they are the clearest, most beautiful images of a Sasquatch you will ever see. They're just stunning. So if you want to see a real I'll thank you, Ariana. Love you. Yes. Check it out on YouTube. I'll bring Todd back on. Todd this is when he's busiest because he spends pretty much the entire summer in the Canadian wilderness. So usually I have Todd come on the podcast in the fall after he's done leading all his tours. He's been asking me to come up there for a long time. So I just need to get more in shape so I can handle a 20-mile walk into basically the wilderness to go and meet them. Todd has invited me. So that is on my bucket list. I'm working on it. I would love to tell you guys all about it. At some point, maybe I'll go and see a Sasquatch myself. They're wonderful beings. They do have souls. In fact, I think they've got a deeper connection to their soul than anyone else on this planet. So Todd is absolutely convinced that they are telepathic and they can sense your intentions from over a mile away. They know when you are a mile from their house, basically. They can read your mind from that far away. And they know what your intention is. This is why people don't see them very much. If they know that you're up there hunting, they will leave you alone. They don't really want you. They don't want to be seen. They don't want to be messed with. But if they know that your intention is to go up there, to connect with them, to feel their presence, to send them love and to express to them, how much you honor and appreciate them, they'll let you get close. They'll even let you see them. They will come out if they know what your intentions are and they know your intentions are honorable. If they do not know that, then that is when you either get left alone or they will even attack you. There are people that disappear all the time. Do I think that they're actually trying to hurt people? No. In fact, I think that most of them just want to be left alone. And if they think that you're going to try and hurt one of their babies and you get a giant rock upside the head because of it, I'm sorry, but you got too close. I feel the same way about those people that do when they get out of their car in Kruger Park and they try and take a picture of a lion that's 5 feet away. Okay? Those common sense doesn't get you very far in life sometimes if you don't have it. So this is why I say, if you respect nature, if you honor them and you go there with the intention of being honorable, then you're more likely to see them. And this is why very few people do actually see them. So just reading through if there's any other questions. I am going to head off since I wasn't planning on going again over my talking. I was going to do 2 hours yesterday. I was going to do 2 hours today. So I have the witch wound class tomorrow. For those of you who are interested in joining Carolyn and I are doing a class tomorrow on healing the witch wound. It will be at noon Eastern time, 5 p.m. in the UK. For those of you who are aware, it is actually, was it Remembrance Day yesterday? I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. Or maybe it was even today. I can't remember, but it is basically the day of honoring people who were killed as witches in the UK. So I don't think it's a coincidence that literally like one day after the official day that they honor those people that were having the witch wound class. So I don't believe in coincidence. The timing is just chef's kiss. So I'm very excited to teach you guys all about everything that we have learned from doing this healing work ourselves, from having our own experience, because as you guys probably know, I have 2 witch wounds. Carolyn also has a witch wound. So we've been working diligently on healing that for ourselves, and to be able to share that with you guys so you can start healing that within yourself is one of the greatest gifts that we can offer. Because many of us, including myself, deal with things like imposter syndromes where we hide ourselves, we shrink ourselves down, and we don't want to basically step in our power because we saw what happened when we tried to in the past, right? And all those horrible things happened to us. And so this is a way of not just healing all of this, but of honoring the people who went through those experiences, to say their names, to talk about some of their stories, and to go into a little bit about, the aspects of this work. And if you want to get into the right mindset for this, one of the best recordings that you could watch, if you go on my Patreon, you will see that there is a recording for the Salem clearing that we did when we were in Salem, Massachusetts around last October. So we spent 3 hours. It was myself, Bradley, and Kat. And I believe Carolyn was on the call with us as well. But anyway, we spent 3 hours crossing over earthbounds that were stuck due to the Salem witch trials. We crossed over every single person that we found, including the people who died in prison, who never even survived long enough to go to trial. The people that we crossed over in Salem, if you watch that recording, you'll understand. You're going to feel things hearing that recording that is it's going to shake some stuff up. We'll just put it that way. There's a lot of emotion that rises to the surface when you're listening to that recording. And to be honest, it was one of the most powerful things that I think we've done as a group yet. And like I said, it was 3 hours of crossing over earthbounds. Not only did we cross them over, we got to hear some of their perspectives, some of their stories. So I think I'm actually going to watch the Salem recording myself tonight. I think I'm going to rewatch it again. I didn't watch the recording. I only went through it live. But I think I'm going to listen to the recording tonight. It's up on my Patreon if you guys are interested. The Patreon is called Beastie Busters. This is where we post our lost soul rescues and a lot of our really long sessions. And it's mind-blowing. It was one of the most beautiful sessions we've ever had. And in fact, one of the names that we will talk about in class tomorrow, his name was George Burroughs. If you watch the recording, you'll understand just saying his name makes me want to cry. Love you, George. There are people that are just the salt of the earth, the most loving, wonderful people you'll ever meet were persecuted for trying to do the right thing. So the Witch Wound class isn't just about healing it within ourselves. It's about healing the collective. And it's about sending love to those who deserve it. And when we have people like George had crossed over, you know, that when you hear the recording, you'll understand how emotional it was. George was one of the only people that was actually crossed over. He was already crossed when we checked on him. And you ask why? Well, George he gave a beautiful speech. He actually read, the Lord's Prayer perfectly right before he recited the Lord's Prayer flawlessly. And everybody was arguing. They were like, nobody that has a demonic possession could ever do what he did. And so when we connected and we tuned in and we had a conversation with George, he was elated that we were helping the other women. That was the one thing that he was like, you'll see in the recording, he has spent all of his time and focus in the astral. He hasn't reincarnated. George is still in spirit. And I thought, wonder why George hasn't reincarnated yet. He crossed over immediately. He was waiting for the ladies. He wanted to help. He wanted to be a part of their rescue. Because most of the women who were killed in Salem were not crossed over, including the people who died in prison awaiting trial were not crossed over. They were still in death loops. So if you are in my class tomorrow and you would like something to watch tonight, I highly recommend going on the Patreon and watching the recording from Salem. It is one of the most emotional yet beautiful clearings we've ever done. And just that one scene with George, you're going to understand how much we have so many beautiful people around us helping us in spirit all the time, and we have no idea. So he's just one of many people that I wish that I could honor on a regular basis because of how much they just deserve that reverence. So we love you, George. And to Galis as well. Galis is one of my guides. Galis Duncan was one of our main people who have been helping us with these witch wounds. Galis, for those of you who have seen Outlander, you probably know a little bit about who Galis was. Galis was somebody who was persecuted as a witch, and she was burned at the stake in Edinburgh. And Galis is one of the most loving, most wonderful people. In fact, just watch. I won't even watch Outlander ever again, probably, because of how they really just did Galis so dirty in that show. She was killed for helping people. And they made her look like she was an evil witch in that TV show, just for drama, just for entertainment purposes. So the reason I'm bringing Galis up, though, is because of how much they make up stuff, how much they twist the truth of our history. How many women suffered horrible. Galis was treated terribly for a whole year in prison. And when I say terribly, I'm sure you can understand what I'm talking about. I don't want to get too much into detail because I don't want to flag AI for saying things, but I'm sure you can imagine the depravity that she was subjected to for a year of incarceration. They starved them, they beat them, they tortured them, they forced them into false confessions, they shaved their heads, they put scald bridles on them so they couldn't even speak. It's just, yeah. So then to basically to bring her up in history and then to mention her, but then to do a complete disservice of telling an absolute lie, a disgusting, horrible lie about what happened and why she was killed in the first place. It's just, they did her dirty. We'll put it that way. It's just wrong. So this is another reason why I wanted to have this class, is to really to tell their stories accurately, to let people know that no, they were not witches doing evil things. They were not talking to the devil. They were not, Galus got blamed for sinking a ship in storm. She got blamed. She sang a song that talked about a ship sinking, and not even a week later, a ship almost sank carrying the queen. And somebody in Edinburgh on the other side of the freaking country spread a rumor that the reason that the ship almost went down is because Galus sang a song in a pub. That was it. She sang a pub song and got burned at the stake for it. And then 300 years later, they're telling everybody that she was an evil witch. Like, ugh. So my point in all of this is that the stories that you hear are often so twisted and made up. They're told by the people who did those depravities in the first place. So the people who wrote their stories, the people who are telling their history about what happened, we talk about history being written by the victors. We don't realize that history is written by psychopaths. Most of the time, the people who were doing the most evil, vile things in history were the ones writing those very history books. So to be able to connect with people like Galus and George and be able to tell their story accurately, to be able to hear it from them, from their perspective, what it was like to go through that, is a gift that you can't really get these days. Because we hear, one of the things I asked Fergus, I was like, do you like watching Outlander? No, he refuses to watch Outlander. Fergus does not like Outlander one bit. And I was like, because they mentioned the Mackenzies. Like, how can you not like it? It's all about the Mackenzies. He is a Mackenzie. I thought he would love it. No, he hates Outlander. I was like, why? And he's like, because it's all a lie. And he said that after what I heard about Galus. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. If they lied about Galus, they lied about everything. The whole history is made up. Imagine standing there watching a TV show about yourself 400 years later and seeing how they portray you as somebody evil. So this is why, when it comes to actually doing these lost soul rescues, this is why we go on the ghost busting tours. This is why we put so much emphasis on helping the earthbounds that get stuck and on telling their true history, telling their experiences, helping them to get the real version out there. Because think of how gross they must feel thinking that all these millions of people saw that and get such a twisted perspective as to what actually happened. So anyway, this is why we're doing the witch wound class. It's not just about bringing up the true history. It's not just about honoring the people who suffered in ways that humans should never have suffered. It was just, there's certain things that we went through. Like we talk about scald bridles, for example, right? And how a scald bridle is one of the more horrific things that we notice, right? Like scald bridles being one of the things that they used to put on people's heads. And there are certain things that they were so creative of that I'm like, how did this even happen? Like, where did they even get the creative nature of that? Right? And I thought, like, the strappado, for example. Does anybody know what a strappado is? I'm going to just show you really quick what a strappado is. This is history that was wiped out, you guys, that people have no idea about. They don't want people to know what they went through. So let me just show you really quick. So a strappado, this is one of the things that I learned in the research. That is a strappado. That is what they used to do to witches. You see that person up there? That's a strappado. They pulled both of your shoulders out. It dislocated your shoulders. It was basically a way of crucifying people without the nail and the cross. And that is one of the things that they did to people. Has anybody ever even seen anything like that? I didn't even know about it until I was writing the class. And this was happening, what, 300 years ago? So you remember we talked about writing history and how much the victors, so to speak, are the ones writing the history, and you wonder why all of this stuff gets swept under the rug. So, and there are people who will have pain from this and not even know why. They have no idea because the pain hasn't gone away. They still carry it. If you were stuck with a strapato in a past life, chances are you still got shoulder pain. I had a guy the other day who had really severe pain every year at the same time of the year. Every year he had back pain. Every year in the same time of the year and didn't know why. You know what we found in his record? Religious persecution. They put him on the rack. Guess when they did it? At that exact time of the year that he has the pain every year. When the beautiful flowers are coming up and the bees are starting to come around, he starts getting back pain. Why? Because it was springtime when they tortured him. People have no idea this stuff is still lingering. It's still causing pain. It's still there in the subconscious mind. Your body remembers and you don't. So you go to a place and you see something and you get triggered and you don't understand why you're triggered. And this is why we find so many people with witch wounds that have no idea what they're dealing with. They know about the imposter syndrome. They know about shrinking them down. They know about the fears that they have of standing outside of their comfort zone and of being seen in public and speaking their mind. They know about the symptoms, but they don't know about the root cause. And this is what the class is about. It's not just about honoring the victims. It's treating the root cause. It's healing the triggers so that they stop coming up at inopportune moments and causing pain and suffering for no reason. Somebody said, is the pain still in the etheric body? Doesn't the etheric body die? No, it doesn't. You are your etheric body. Your etheric body is what you switch to when you're changing from your astral body to your physical body. So no, it doesn't. You're even if you, let's say, had multiple lifetimes in between, if you have a trigger, it's not that the pain wasn't cleared, because usually it is. It's because you re-triggered it. So when you die, you go to the healing place, right? And you get all that stuff healed to a degree, but then you incarnate again. And let's say that when you incarnate, you go down a similar path where you have a similar experience. And when that happens, your mind remembers the other experience. You may not remember it consciously, but subconsciously you do. So let's say you go to a place that you were in this last lifetime where you were tortured. Let's say, for example, there was a church, not a church, what do you call it? A castle that I went to. It was Black Ness Castle up in Scotland. And I felt so sick walking into that castle. I thought that I had attachments. I thought that I wasn't sovereign. I felt so freaking ill in that place. I didn't know why. And I had no idea. Guess why? Most people think, well, were you captive there? Were you held there as a prisoner? I wasn't even held in Black Ness Castle as a prisoner. Do you know what I was? I was a scullery maid. In fact, they actually called it a special name. They called it a skulking maid. And I was like, a skulking maid? What the hell is a skulking maid? And they said, well, it's kind of like a scullery maid, except you were the one that had to go down into the dungeon and feed the scraps to the people in the dungeon. So I had to go down in there and bring them water and scraps of moldy bread or whatever it is to keep them alive down there. They didn't want them to starve to death. They wanted them to stay alive so they would be tortured longer. So I had to go down, and that created significant trauma, just going down there and having to communicate with them and they would throw feces at me and all kinds. They were nasty to me, understandably so. I mean, yeah, justifiably so. They were nasty. Of course they were going to be. They were locked down there till they died. But just that alone created significant trauma to the point where just walking in that castle, I got sick as a dog. And I thought I got attacked. Nope, it wasn't an attack. It was just trauma coming to the surface. So going to that place is what triggered the trauma. That is what brought it back to the forefront of my mind. So there are certain things that can trigger you to bring the pain in. And for that gentleman, it was just the time of year. Just seeing the beautiful flowers and seeing the happy little bees going off and doing their thing was the trigger, because what happened to him happened in springtime. So now springtime comes around and the body starts freaking out, going, oh my God, they're going to come for me, because it remembers. So this is one of the reasons why you have to reprogram the subconscious mind. So in doing so, you're able to heal the subconscious so it stops being triggered. Therefore, you stop creating a bridge between the other experiences that you had that were very traumatic. Because if something comes up that triggers that memory, even if you don't consciously know what the memory is, you might have flashbacks, you might not. Your body might just start reacting. And so it just reminds me of what happened with Ella as we're standing next to that cliffside, and Ella's partner climbed up on the rock and was looking over the cliff and going, wow, that's so cool. And then all of a sudden she had this internal panic of, oh my God, and her whole body, she just started crying. Her whole body broke down. We're like, are you okay? And she had no idea what was wrong. No idea what was happening. You know what happened? Her partner fell. We validated it later on. So the point in that is that you might not have any clue why your body is having a visceral reaction to something. You might just see something and your body just goes into shock and you have no idea why. That's why. It's the past life trauma. It's the triggered past life resonance that brings that feeling to the forefront, and it creates that sensation in the body. So I went way longer today than I had planned, but I just enjoy hanging out with you guys today. And thank you for spending time with us. We still have 180 people hanging out with us right now. So I must have been entertaining today for another 2.5 hour podcast. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for signing up for my witch wound class tomorrow, because we have put so much time, effort, and love into this class. In fact, we've put pretty much everything that we have learned about healing our own witch wounds and about helping our clients into that class. So Carolyn and I are very proud of it. We're very excited to show you guys everything that we have learned and to help you, work through it and to support each other in that. So thank you to everybody who's going to be attending tomorrow. There's 150 people signed up. So I am so excited. It's going to be probably one of our biggest classes yet. I cannot wait. Love you guys so much. I hope you have a phenomenal weekend, and I will see you guys on Monday. Bye, everyone.